Hey guys, and welcome back to my review on the Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Deluxe Class Shockwave. Just giving you a very quick rundown of the packaging. We can see here that Shockwave does include the third part to the Build-A-Figure MacAdam, that being one of the legs. We've got Shockwave, the MacAdam Build-A-Figure on the side. The back of the packaging showcases Shockwave in robot mode as well as his tank mode. We've also got an image of Shockwave deploying his Shock Blast. We've got all of the other figures in the assortment as well as the second wave, although it now appears that RC and Thunderhowl will actually be packed in the third wave of Cyberverse figures. And then finally, on the side of the packaging, we have the Decepticon lineup, Megatron, Starscream, and Shockwave. So here we have Cyberverse Shockwave. Now, out of all of the Cyberverse figures, this of course was the one that I was most looking forward to. Just as for those of you who have followed my channel intensively, Shockwave is one of my favourite, if not my favourite, Decepticon characters. So any type of Generation Deluxe-esque figure that I can get hold of him, I'll definitely be sure to pick it up. This version of Shockwave comes to us from Cyberverse, and I've got to say his design is actually one of my favourites from Cyberverse, despite this being my favourite character. And this is, you guessed it, my favourite out of this first wave of Cyberverse Deluxes. I just think that Shockwave feels the best, he feels the most compact, he definitely feels the most in line with some of the Siege and Studio Series figures. He just feels like a really nicely well-made, very sturdy looking deluxe class. I think that probably primarily boils down to the fact that this figure doesn't really have many ball joints, which was one of the main criticisms I had about Optimus and Megatron. Now, in terms of weapons, Shockwave does in fact include a handheld blaster, which I do believe is the first time that we have got Shockwave wielding a handheld weapon. Usually, of course, he's used to using his arm cannon, but here we've got some nice purple paint apps here for obviously where the barrel would be, some nice black paint deco. It does appear as if though some of the purple has in fact leaked on this black section. Even these top pieces here have been picked out in a nice black paint app, and we do in fact actually have some really nice sculpt work going on there as well, which is cool to see. We do in fact of course get a blast effect with Shockwave. This piece actually comes in two sections, this more projectile type of weapon and then this more impact type of blast. These to me are really quite redundant. I don't really like them whatsoever, especially considering that they are not one whole solid piece. Actually, taking a look at Shockwave himself, as stated previously, this is my favourite out of this Cyberverse line, and to be honest with you, I think after this wave I probably am going to be done with Cyberverse. This line really hasn't necessarily merged too well with me in terms of quality. I think that there are more misses than there are hits with this line. Shockwave is by far one of the hits, and Bumblebee too when we eventually get to him. But taking a look at some of the details, we can see here that we have that very hexagonal type of cuboid design for Shockwave's head, and he actually does in fact have two eyes, the main Cyclops eye and then this miniature smaller eye, which I don't necessarily think detracts too much from his main Cyclops eye. We do in fact have Shockwave's signature horns at the top. I really do like this more electric purple that they have got set throughout the figure, and this darker purple as well as these nice silver paint apps in the torso, some nice paint apps on the Decepticon insignia as well as some nice purple on the torso area and on the forearms, some nice silver on the insides of the forearms. And then as we turn our attention to the actual main cannon itself, this too has been detailed quite nicely with a very rigid, very sturdy and firm type of plastic used for the transparent purple hose. It's almost too sturdy for my liking. I wish it was slightly more rubberized, much like the Studio Series version, as it can actually prevent the figure from getting himself into some nice poses. I do like the inclusion of this hip armor. It does just add to the overall look of the figure, and the fact that they are in fact articulated just adds some extra oomph to the overall posing when you do in fact display him. The legs too have got some nice detailing on them as well, with some nice purple paint apps, and the toes too are quite nicely sculpted. In terms of articulation, Shockwave's head is on an incredibly stiff rotation joint. It's not a ball joint, unfortunately. This is the one instance where I do wish that they had a ball joint on the head, but nevertheless it's nice enough. We do have some articulation actually at the horns of Shockwave. The arms are both on ball joints, so can rotate the full 360 and can hinge out to the sides. Full 360 rotation at the bicep, a hinged joint at the elbow, and then a full 360 swivel at the wrists. Full 360 degree rotation at the waist, as well as hinge joints on these skirt armor pieces. The legs can kick forwards that far as well as back to about that far on a very stiff hinge joint. You can do the splits that far as well as bend well over 90 degrees, which is great to see. And then finally the feet can pivot forwards and backwards, as well as have a great range of ankle rocker as well. So overall, definitely the best out of all of these Cyberverse figures so far, and Shockwave definitely takes the cake of being the best out of this line as well. For a quick size comparison, here we have the Cyberverse Shockwave compared next to the rather puny looking Cyberverse Megatron. Considering all these figures are within the deluxe class assortment, they are all more or less exactly identical in terms of height. So although it's not accurate to an on-show appearance, I think that these two look rather nice together considering that they are both just deluxes. But you can really see that Shockwave just looks so much more visually eye appealing than the very bland Megatron, which whilst it does represent the design of Megatron, I do think Megatron should have had some red highlights throughout his body like he does in the cartoon, much like Shockwave has purple highlights throughout his body. Now, getting Shockwave transformed into his tank mode is actually quite straightforward. First of all, you're going to want to remove his arm cannon. It is in fact a separate piece, and if you don't have it installed, he does have two symmetrical arms. We can then come to this back section. You could in fact remove it completely. This whole section here is able to be detached. However, just for the convenience of the transformation, I'm going to leave it in. What we can proceed to do here is now lift open these cavities here, fold out the feet of the tank, rotate the wrists in, and then fold that down, and then this here will come over the top. Repeat the same process here for this side, so fold that up, fold this out, fold that up, and then fold that back up too. Now what we can do is come to this front torso plate here, and you're going to want to bring it over Shockwave's head, just like so. What we can now do is bring these sections out and over as well, and then you're going to want to take the chest plate and, believe it or not, actually push it in so that it clips into place and just solidifies this entire area. Now what we can do is lift these joints up. So what you're going to do is rotate that up and rotate this section up as well. Rotate here and fold this down and repeat the same process. So you can almost tell that we are creating that rather spider-like crab design for Shockwave's tank mode. Rotate the waist around and then literally just bend the knees like so. Fold this section back. Take this whole cannon piece and just, as I stated, this hose is incredibly rigid. Port that into place, and there we have Shockwave in his rather obscure looking tank mode. Now we can bring in his gun accessory and peg that onto the top as well as his blast effects, so we can take that too and peg that all in together. Definitely the most obscure and the weakest mode out of the two modes. Shockwave never really seems to get a great looking alt form. Perhaps that's something that can be rectified in the new Bumblebee movie when Shockwave finally makes his return in, I believe, Bumblebee 2. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? But we can see here that he is rather a crab-like tank design. Shockwave always appears to be transformed into a tank. I don't think it's too great of an alt mode. However, it does evoke the look that we see within the cartoon show, so it does fit the character fairly nicely. It doesn't really offer anything new than we saw in robot mode. It's more or less just rotating a few panels around. There's no new panels that actually contribute to the look of this particular mode. It's just Shockwave basically on all fours with his chest piece flipped upwards. So overall, a rather weak mode, but it gets the job done nonetheless. So that was my rather quick and brief review of the Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Deluxe Class Shockwave. Personally, as I've stated throughout this review, this is by far the best figure out of this wave so far, and I still have Bumblebee to go, and Bumblebee 2 is a very good figure. Optimus and Megatron, whilst they're not bad, they have some design flaws in them, such as the really loose ball joints, which just takes the overall playability value out of them completely. Shockwave feels incredibly sturdy. He brings back the whole idea of using pins rather than ball joints and hinge joints, which actually make his joints a lot more sturdier. The plastic quality on this figure also seems a lot better than some of those earlier Cyberverse figures that I took a look at. But once again, considering how hit and miss this line has been so far, I really don't think it's going to be a line that I'm going to be delving into too much more in the future. I'll probably just complete this Mac Adam Builder figure wave, and depending on what they bring out next, I may miss it or I may in fact pick it up. I hope you enjoyed my review. Personally, Shockwave is the best out of the line so far. Robot mode is great, the articulation is great, and the tank mode is okay. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you think of the review as well as the figure itself, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.